Hello, everyone, and thank you for participating. My name is Mar de Andres, and I'm part of the Repsol Foundation volunteering team. I'm going to explain the project a little bit, and then you will start with your activity. The Volunteering Week's objective is for people who form part of Repsol to work together for a social purpose and respond to the social environmental needs that we have in our society. This week, in 25 countries, more than 1,000 participants, we are around 1,700 from the company, will stop for a while and dedicated to very diverse activities with the purpose of improving things. As you know, people are the strongest force to change the world. Precisely, the people that work in companies make up more than 50% of the population. So we are very busy people and never have enough time to stop and think about dedicating time to social matters. However, you are people with great skills and potential to bring value to the world. That is why we believe the importance of companies like Repsol offering these spaces to their employees. In conclusion, simply value these types of activities. Many of us can question if with a short and scheduled activity we can change the world. The world doesn't change with only one activity, but it does with every small gesture and with many people in many places doing small things. That is our situation this week. So that is how we are going to create a real social movement. This is why I encourage you to take advantage of this moment. Please forget problems, the global pandemic, forget work, and please enjoy listening, enjoy assimilating, enjoy taking notice, and of course, enjoy yourself. Without further delay, now I leave you with Celia Conde, that she is part from Pau Costa Foundation, entity who will lead this activity. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mar, for your kind words. And yes, and thank you for all you connecting from different parts of the world, Europe, Switzerland, Netherlands, Belgium, Norway, also USA, Canada, Libya, and Algeria. It's a very true honor for the Pau Costa Foundation to be able to address so many different countries and cultures at the same time. One of the Sustainable Development Goals, of course, is this climate action, the number 13, which advocates immediate action to mitigate the consequences that we are already experiencing as a result of climate change. One of many natural disasters that we are already faced are extreme wildfires, as we have recently witnessed in Chile or Australia. For this reason, we are very grateful to Repsol for presenting this opportunity for us to participate in this third Repsol International Volunteer Week. We are very delighted to join you throughout the day. My name is Celia Conde, and I am a journalist, and I work in the communication area of the Pau Costa Foundation, a nonprofit entity dedicated to wildfire prevention and understanding fire ecology. We also educate the youngest in classrooms and raise awareness in civil society while working to improve extinction and especially prevention of wildfires as we all face the climate emergency. In this presentation, we have the honor of having Lucian Litton. Lucian will focus on community engagement, research, and the FireWise program. Lucian holds a Master on Urban and Regional Planning and a Master of Natural Resources degrees from Virginia Tech, and he lives in Denver, Colorado, United States. Ditton will share all his experience building and inform and engage public to protect a structure from wildfires. Well, without further ado, let me remind you that during the 40 minutes that Lucian will speak, you can leave your questions on the YouTube chat, since the last 15 minutes on this lecture will be dedicated to answer all these questions. Please also bear in mind that this webinar is being recorded, and some minutes after the session is over, you will be able to share the video with anyone who you think might be interested in watching it. So please take this opportunity to ask whatever you want. Remember that no question is silly. We are here for that, and we are delighted to be able to accompany you and learn with you. Finally, we invite you to share this message that Lucian will show in the last slide with you. And finally, also, we invite you to see all these messages that Lucian will share also with the hashtag Repsol Volunteers by tagging Repsol Worldwide. So, well, this is going to be our small contribution to worldwide climate action. Although it seems minimal, if we all come together, we can make very meaningful changes. So thank you very much for your attention. I will stop speaking. And Lucian, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much. And I'm going to share my screen so you all can see a PowerPoint presentation. And if you bear with me for just 1 second. Good. And I want to thank the Repsol Foundation and the Pau Costa Foundation, especially for bringing you all together, for bringing this issue of global sustainability to the forefront and seeing wildfire as a part of it. I liked when they said at the beginning, doing those small things. That's what we're going to be talking about today. Looking at the things you can actually do as a resident, as a homeowner, as a member of your community on the issue of wildfire and how it pertains to the health of our global planet. For a bit of a agenda, I want to talk about the perception of wildfire and why we see it and why we're losing communities to it. Dispel some myths about wildfire and what a resident can actually do in the situation. We're going to talk about the home ignition zone, which is a way of looking at the home and its environment and what you can do around your own home. Also, we'll talk about what you can do around your community to spread that knowledge, as they were saying this morning. And some questions at the end, which we'll have time for, and I encourage you to certainly to ask. We'll be talking about building an informed and engaged public to protect structures from wildfire. And I want to introduce the National Fire Protection Association first, so you can understand who we are, how we're bringing this public education message to the forefront. The National Fire Protection Association is based in Boston, Massachusetts since its founding, and it's a global self-funded nonprofit organization established in 1896, devoted to eliminating death, injury, property, and economic loss due to fire, electrical, and related hazards. Many of the fire and life safety standards that are for commercial, residential, industrial entities are created by many thousand volunteers that NFPA has on standards committees, and we thank them for their work for creating safer environments around fire. But those related hazards are where wildfire comes into play, and specifically the risks that wildfire give to structures. And of course, you've seen in the news that the loss of homes around the world. Something to share first about the perception of wildfire, and it's something that we see here in the United States. It's certainly something in Europe and around the world as well. When they make the news, they're massive fires. Right now in Colorado, where I am in the western part of the United States, right along the base of the Rocky Mountains. The Cameron Peak Fire is burning currently. It is now the largest wildfire in Colorado history. 203,000 acres is about 82,000 hectares, to give it some context of its size. What we're also seeing in California, this is from CAL FIRE and their incident map, which you can see online. San Francisco is in the middle of that map, just kind of west of UC Stockton there. These are the fires that have occurred since August. Some are still burning, some have been put out by different measures, but they cover thousands upon thousands of acres to the point where in August, this is now 2 months ago, they had surpassed 1 million acres burned, which usually doesn't happen to the end of a season, and broke records 3 months before the wildfire season, as they would say, in California was to end, and in some cases was even beginning. The factors for wildfire, in a very broad sense, are one certainly of climate change. It is drier In places, there are droughts that are occurring. In California, actually on the West Coast, going down North and South America, all the way to Chile. These are creating environments that are drier and more susceptible to a fire if it's ignited. So climate change on its own may not be the sole determinant, but it is a factor in why they're occurring. And then there are others there, of course, as well. We'll talk about those. Then it comes to the issue of the destruction that those wildfires occur. And we'll speak to what actually can be done by residents to start to mitigate that. The important thing here as well is that when you hear wildfire in the news, it's the big fires that will get coverage. But equally, a fire of 1 hectare can cause risk to homes in its community. In the United States, by frequency, the most wildfires actually occur in the Southeast, down along the Gulf Coast, Georgia, the Carolinas, Florida, that area. But it's the large fires in the West that are most noticed because they create the most impact. Around the world, wildfire may be new to some areas like Northern Europe, the UK, where we've done work, and I certainly want to share some things with you from there, but also in areas of Latin America, South America, Africa, other places. They're having more impact. They're burning at different times of the year than they're used to, and burning in ways that we're not used to. So one of the issues of changing ourselves to the new environment we find ourselves in is that we have built to an environment that was different, that was in many cases before climate change really took hold. But there's something through what we'll talk about today that we can do to adapt with that situation and stay safe from it in terms of our home environments, but also things we can do to hopefully improve the situation that the globe is facing. Wildfire in most cases is a natural occurrence. There's an ecological need for the forest to clean out its underbrush to stay healthy. There are many plants that exist and reproduce based on fire, opening up cones and whatever else. It has gone on and been a part of the ecological history of Earth for eons. The loss of communities to these fires is not something that is historic or should go on. It is something that should not be brought in together. We should not assume that because a wildfire will occur, we will lose communities to it. We want, in many cases, the natural use of wildfire, the idea of fire in its natural element, to happen without it impacting homes and the human condition. Where it does, and when it goes through some things, is how we decide how we use land, economic developments, and how we make those considerations, where we're building. The building policies of what we're building in those areas, the age of the homes, the way the communities have been constructed when they were constructed, how they're in the rural environment, in more built-up environments. A phrase that you hear a lot in US use and around the world as well is the wildland-urban interface, where our developments meet what was before virgin land. You may hear it as the rural-urban interface in other areas. Questions of private property, public perceptions of ownership, who owns what land? That's a very big issue in the United States, and you'll hear that. It comes up when it comes to land management and forest management, the amount of fuel that's on the land, the amount of vegetation that's there that can burn if it becomes dry, if it's not maintained, and then something ignites it, whether it be natural like a lightning strike or man-made by unintended consequences, like a spark coming off of a piece of machinery, all the way to arson, intended fire. Perceptions of the risk that the communities have. Is the land transitioning from an agricultural sense to then back to a natural sense? When I visited the Pau Consta Foundation many times in Catalonia, the northern part of Spain, they're in a region that's moving from agricultural back to the land being forested and the rest. The perceptions of them, of the residents to that may be of the old land and not what it's becoming. We'll talk later about creating a conversation around that, which is very important and something you can actually do as a participant in this webinar after it's over with. Then the affordability, the accessibility, the ability of the residents to address the risk. Unfortunately, as you've seen in Europe, in Greece, in Portugal, the deaths that have occurred when wildfires happened because of people's ability to maintain properties, issues of elderly members of communities, their ability to evacuate, their ability to get information about evacuating. All those come into play and are very important to think about when you think of your community and its risk to fire. And then finally, is the community even recognized? Issues of whether or not services and emergency response can happen in an area. How are those people viewed? In places like Latin America and others, they may be informal settlements that aren't dealt with in a municipal sense, but they have the same risk to fire that everyone else does too. There's a myth about wildfire that I want to get out of the way, and I think it's important for everyone to understand when we talk about what you can do around your home. In this picture, this is actually from San Diego, California in 2003. You see the loss of homes all through it. But you also see along the roads green trees. So obviously they're not miracle trees that survived the wildfire. It was not a wall of flame that went through a community and destroyed everything in its path. What we'll speak of later is that it's embers coming from the fire that land on structures, that ignite them, and then actually burn most often when the wildfire itself has moved on from a community, has gone to its next place. But what it has left causes a community to be at risk. So you'll see trees that are still standing and homes that are burned down. The severity of the fire can then, yes, cause total destruction. And we'll talk about that, but it's what is then burning after the wildfire has gone on. And this comes to the idea of natural fire becoming a fire in the wildland-urban interface, as we talked about, where people live, and then an urban conflagration. If the community then absorbs those embers, ignites itself and burns on, that becomes what destroys communities. You've seen that in the media when you look at fires in the United States and other places, but also, unfortunately, places like Mate in Greece, in Portugal, of course, as well, in the south of France, that actually lost an entire community to wildfire in August. You see severe fire conditions, very much what this entire webinar series is about, this changing landscape that we're seeing before us. Dealing, dealing with the fuel that's on the ground, the vegetation, the weather, the topography of the place. Is it conducive to having a fire go through it because how wind may push it? And then obviously the issue of how dry it is. We're seeing that now with fires occurring in places that they haven't before, at times of the year they haven't before. And certainly climate change must be thought of as a reason for that. That then moves, to a wildland fire occurring. Something has set it off, whether it be natural or human caused by error or intent. Rapid fire spread, high intensity. That then leads to an urban fire. That fire transitions to where homes are. Things have become ignited by multiple simultaneous ignitions, by embers that are being blown by wind forward of where the fire is. What happens then is an overwhelmed fire of suppression. The fire response that can come and help put out what are now structure fires are overwhelmed by the size, the severity of it. That, of course, leads to reduced fire protection, the inability for them to deal with the multiple fires that are occurring, and disaster, the loss of a community as it is now burning multiple structures, and those structures are igniting other structures. So what can we do about this? What everyone on this webinar has an ability to influence is that urban fire component. When the wildfire, which in many cases is natural or is burning through a natural environment, comes up to where homes are and ignites them. If we can stop those ignitions, then we can stop the overwhelming of the fire response. We can stop the loss of their ability to deal with what are now structure fires, maybe very few. Maybe the actions you have done has ensured that the structure fires have not occurred, so they can deal with the wildfire itself and not a structure fire in addition at the same time. And then, of course, communities not being lost to the fire. In a sense, as said by Dr. Jack Cohen, who is now retired but was with the U.S. Forest Service with the Missoula Fire Lab, it isn't rocket science. It's far more difficult. It's social science. The long-term solution to the loss of communities from wildfire is a human solution. And there's a role that we can play with that. It's about empowering the community. And as we've said, it's the embers, not some fire front burning through the community out of control of what we can do, that are leading to the ignition of structures. And a resident-led model, resident-led action, you on this webinar, can advance that social change behavior and lead to a safer environment for your home, your community, and in the end, the landscape around it as well. So how? As we had learned from a workshop participant years ago, they said they didn't know there was something they could do to protect their home from wildfire. And this was after a presentation of philosophy from the research, from science, and then steps that can be made. And I want to share that with you, because my hope at the end of this is that you see there is something you can do to protect your home from wildfire as well. And it's what we call the home ignition zone. It's an area expanding from the structure. And it's important for you to think of the risk from wildfire from the home outward, instead of from outward onto the home. And it's broken up into three pieces. And I want to share those three with you. As you look through this diagram, you can imagine your own home in it, or communities in where you live in your own countries from where you see it. And then you can start to apply it to what you have. The immediate zone includes the house itself, and it's that red piece around the structure. It's 1 to 2.5 meters from the home and the home itself. It's the most important when you're thinking about embers being cast from a wildfire and landing on a structure or right next to a structure, and then the risk that that structure has from that event. Because when an ember lands, it's a burning piece of debris. Imagine a piece of a tree, a piece of material from the ground. This is blown by the fire and it lands. Let's say it lands on a roof. It lands in a gutter. It lands right next to the structure, right against the edge. It is burning and it will transfer its heat. It'll transfer the flame to something until it exhausts itself and burns out. That's the risk that occurs to a structure. That's also where you can stop that risk from becoming fatal to the structure itself. It's issues of cleaning your roof and gutters of dead debris. If you have trees that blow leaves or blow needles or whatever else onto your structure during the year, you can imagine that's also where the wind will carry embers to. So cleaning your roof before a fire season, cleaning the gutters, maintaining a clean space around the exact structure of the home. That will keep, when an ember blows to the same spot by the verities of the wind, from it igniting material that's already there and continuing that fire now against the structure. Replacing any loose or missing shingles on your roof, all the way to, if you have a clay tile roof or the rest, closing off areas that may allow an ember to get in and underneath something and then burn and put at risk the roof that's underneath the whatever it is that's then put on top of it against the weather. Thinking of any vents you may have, any access that an ember could get blowing into the attic, and then of course burning from within. Looking at windows, screens, the rest, and material away from the exterior. If you keep firewood, if you keep anything that could ignite right next to the home, You want to move it away from the home during the seasons when wildfires are a risk to your area, because you don't want something landing on that and having that ignite and then burning next to the structure and putting it at risk. This next zone is the intermediate zone, 2 to 10 meters from the structure itself. Here you're looking at issues of keeping ground fire, something burning along the ground, of burning grass, from coming up to the home. So keeping that vegetation, low, mowed, maintained, whatever it may be. Thinking of issues that may break up the spread of fire, like a walkway, a driveway. Natural things like putting down, stone or other things, for aesthetic effect. And then looking at trees and shrubs you may have in this area that could, climb up, bring fire up to a tree or bring fire up to the house itself. Spacing trees out so they don't continue a fire up to a structure. It isn't clear cutting. It isn't cleaning the environment, around a structure, maybe even removing it from a forested environment that you want to live in. It's spacing it out so that the fire can't carry to then the home. Park-like in its view, if you want to think of it that way. The final is then this extended zone, which is 10 meters to 30 meters beyond from a home. It's important in this to think, both in this zone and the one before, that within that zone may be another home if the homes are closely developed. And we'll talk about then the shared risk that people have and what you can do with your neighbor to talk about that risk. But in an environment where the homes are maybe a little more spread out, the homeowner may still be able to control this environment as well. And it's thinking about the heavy accumulation of ground debris that may be in this area, bringing these areas to a more healthy environment that don't have a lot of buildup, that historically a fire may have cleaned out in the past before human involvement in these areas made that our own backyards. And the perception of people not wanting fire in their backyard has led to a different way that nature maintains itself. Thinking of the spacing between trees again, there's an issue of canopy fires at this point where the fire is burning along the tree top. The natural spacing of trees, which ecologically usually occurs, you may want to mimic in this area to keep fires from burning too intensely or from traveling the way they would. And then also think of any other structures that exist in this area that may be on your property if you control out to that extent. Sheds, different things like that, out structures in agricultural senses. They have their own risk to fire and their own mini immediate zones around them, but they maybe exist in this larger area. Those are all things that you can do, and in many cases may already be doing. When we talked about things in the immediate zone, that immediate to 2.5 meters around a house, the cleaning of debris, the cleaning of gutters, the maintaining of roofs, and the thoughts about pieces around it are things that we may do for seasonal cleaning. So in many cases, what you can do for wildfire risk, you may already be doing already. If you have decks, if you have things that attach to the home that are raised, think about what's underneath them. Consider cleaning that out so that an ember can't get underneath and burn up into a deck or in a back garden, things that could bring it to a structure. And then when we talk about communities, think about those in your communities who may not be able to maintain that level of seasonal cleaning. We have a lot of communities here in the United States that will host events where they go around the properties of elderly members in their community and help do that work to maintain the safety of those homes, but also in that community sense, when you think of an urban conflagration, those homes are now safe, other neighbors are now safe as well if they're doing it too, and they communally reduce that risk. There's an illustration there, and we shared it because everyone's home's a little different. The American tradition of how we build homes, more often out of wood, is sometimes unique. Where we've been in the United Kingdom, and this is where this picture is from, certainly Spain and other places that we've been fortunate to visit, it may be brick construction, but that risk of a fire coming up to a structure is the same. In this case, certainly the structure maintained, but the effect to that fencing. It burned it as well. There was a property loss there. There may also be a loss to the back gardens, financial loss, an impact, an insurance impact that's there. Now, in this case, this is a picture out of the United Kingdom as well. It was a fire in a field that was adjacent to a heathland area. It burned up to an area. The homes were okay. There was obviously a lot of smoke, and that was an impact that was new to this community. In the case of the middle of the picture, there was an ignition. An ember got into the attic through a gap that was in the tiling on the roof. It ignited, but the fire service was able to put that out. If you look above the fire truck, though, the apparatus, the appliance, depending on how you, what words you use, if you look there, all of the back gardens have been lost. The fire moved into there. It ignited all the property, all the things that people owned in those back areas, sheds, whatever else it may be. It threatened right up to the back windows, the back, the sunrooms, whatever else it may be. And in many cases, the roofs of those are not made out of the same material as the roof of the main house. An ember could melt through it if it's made out of plastic or something else. So you can have loss to property even if the structure itself is still safe. And as those embers are burning and blowing, they may have landed a block back, 2 blocks back from where the risk may be. So the impact to a community, though not huge, not the entire community by many cases, can impact people further back from a natural environment that they think they won't be affected by. So what now can you do with this information? And how can it be related to where you live, the structures that you live in, some of the unique risks that they have? It's very much about creating the conversation around wildfire risk. And in many cases, that may be new. It may be brought up for the first time. In Catalonia, this was no, excuse me, 2 summers ago, pre-COVID, at a different time and a time we hope we'll all get back to. 4 emergency management agencies came together to talk about wildfire at an agency level for the first time, the risk it has to the communities in their area in Girona, and then also talk to community members about that risk. In Italy, in the Tuscany region, their forestry and volunteer fire services brought people together to talk about where these natural lands were coming up amongst homes and what, in this case, some thinning, some clearing that they wanted to do meant, why they wanted to do it, what the risk was. And it became a way for people to come together and hear about this issue for the first time. Back in Girona, they then went door to door and were able to talk to residents about the risk. In this case, at an agency level, the resident, they were showing a united voice to the resident. And the resident was meeting some of these groups for the first time and hearing an emerging issue from them. But residents themselves at a community level can do this too, talking to other members of their community about the risk that may be there and what they can do to minimize it. And then bringing that to a more organized event. What we have in the United States, what has been modeled in some other countries, like now in Spain, in the UK, in South Africa, in Chile, in Canada, there's a program called Fire Smart, which was created back in the late 90s, early 2000s, which provides this same model for community connection, for resident leadership. Bringing these messages that you've heard and talking to residents about them. What a collaborator of ours in Ireland brought up was that Firewise as a model gives the residents something to do. It's that takeaway, it's that next step. You have education, how do you share that education? How do you maintain and sustain that education in a community? This has been a program that was created in the United States, formally in 2003, although the tenets of it were being shared before. And as of today, we have well over 1,800 communities that are residents, just like that picture before, where you saw the homes against an area of risk, in that case, a rural-urban interface, where they have found that if they collectively talk and educate each other about the risk and do these efforts, they can protect that part of the community. So over the United States, in 43 of our states, we have communities that have identified, that have committed to doing these things. And then yearly, as a part of how this program is designed, renew their efforts by doing a series of events, by doing an educational event, by continuing the messaging. In many areas, long after a wildfire may have occurred, and as usual, when we have risks, we often forget about them. There other things come to mind. So sustaining what we learned from that event through action before it comes again is very important. And residents can do that with each other in what is often a peer-to-peer exchange. I want to share some pictures. This is actually a picture from South Africa. They were creating a garden of plants that were more resilient to fire if they burned right near a structure. And this was a way to both beautify an area of the community and also show what type of plants could be used. The idea of bringing people together in the United States, they'll create a board. They then host a yearly event. They create an action plan, which identifies their risk and then sees what they can do about it over a certain period of time. And after 5 years, they will renew that action plan because they want to make sure, based on a community risk assessment, that it's still reflective of the risks they have and the work that they've done. It leads to further education. This is actually from South Africa as well. Their communities learning upon this were then taking courses on fire management, on actual learning in a very rural area, what they could do to help deal with the fire before the more formal services arrived. And learning about it amongst different stakeholders. This is actually from central Chile, which we were very fortunate to visit 2 years ago. Meeting with communities that are certainly seeing the impact of drought, of climate change, and learning about traditional practices, what can be done in the land, and how to bring the community together to protect the homes that they have. So being about 20 minutes left, I want to allow for some questions, and I do hope there are some. There have been some great messages that I think you all have heard throughout this webinar series, and two that I wanted to reiterate and share again is that preventing wildfires is up to all of us. We all have a role to play. The resident, in fact, has a role to play. And when we talk about wildfires, these are wild, they're unwanted, they're unplanned. There is very much a role for prescribed fire, for the use of fire on some lands to reduce the risk long-term, to bring back some natural balance to it. So you'll no doubt hear that argument often. So there's a piece for all of us to play in that, and different players to have their role in that collective effort. The other is that in the face of fire, prepare, plan, and act. Hopefully what you've heard today shows what you can do around your own home, how you can talk to your neighbors about that education, what they can do, what you all can do in a shared environment, and then to reduce that transfer of what is often a natural event to a very unwanted and unnatural event of losing communities in a conflagration where now different homes are burning, spreading a structural fire and burning down communities, which unfortunately we've seen in Europe and around the world. So yeah, want to thank you all. Want to thank the Repsol Foundation and thank the Paucosta Foundation as well. And I hope you all have learned a little bit you can take back. So Celia, good to see you again.
Thank you very much for your interesting presentation, Lucian. Now it's time for the questions and answers. And we have already received the first question from Libya. I will read you directly.
Thank you.
Hi, this is Sohair from Libya. How can we support and doing great initiative remotely during this circumstance out of raising awareness, such as money, donations to the affected communities?
Mm-hmm. Two ways. If on the easiest way on the internet is that you will find groups that are raising money for the affected. There are large organizations, things like the American Red Cross. In the American context, a lot of we'll have states, 50 states. Within that, there will be counties. That's kind of a local level government. Often counties will have campaigns where they're raising money to help residents, and you can find those on the internet. I would be careful, though, as always. You want to ensure that it's a valid organization. Unfortunately, there are people who take advantage of such times of hardship to fraudulently raise money. But I think if you look at trusted sources like major newspapers that may then list, where things, I'm thinking in California, the San Francisco Chronicle, the LA Times, papers like that, you'll see information. Then at government level, you may find some things. Major organizations, of course, as well. And that goes for anywhere around the world. There'll be people who want to assist and help those who have lost. I would just obviously caution to do all you can to ensure that an organization is legitimate and actually moving the money. Often they have websites that may even explain this, so you can see what's happening. The other piece I'd add to that is just to talk to, as an educated resident, as an educated citizen, to talk to local governments about the risk of fire and what can be done to sort of build that awareness and the need for assistance to all communities who are affected by fire.
Good. Thank you for
Oh.
your quick answer and directly answer.
Yeah.
Yes, like so far we don't have any question, but I will kindly invite you to take this opportunity to ask whatever question to Lucian. So remember that no question is silly. This is probably something new for all of you. And I reckon that this is a really nice opportunity to ask whatever you want. So I will leave some minutes, and you can just please go ahead.
I was going to say during the time that one of the perceptions that we see when we're talking to communities outside the United States is that, and as we've seen in different countries that we've been fortunate enough to work with organizations like the Paulo Costa Foundation in, is that it's a feeling that because of the way homes are constructed, they are more immune to the effects of wildfire. To the news of losses that you may see in other countries. And while in many cases that is true, certainly as we've seen in the UK and others, there hasn't been home loss like that. There hasn't been loss of life that we may see in many fires. Every home has a risk in some ways to an ember landing on it and the property around it. So even though your home may be out of brick, the roof may be out of tile, that is, tile roofs are used in parts of the Southwest and California. Just look around it and consider, where can an ember get in? Where's a flaw in this that could then spread the fire? There may be debris that's packed into the ends. They may not be capped. There may be cracks or maybe a cracked tile that could lead to then a fire spreading. The windows, other pieces. Because in many cases that's what led to the conflagrations that we then see in places like Mate, unfortunately in communities in Portugal, in the south of France that has lost places in Italy and other places, and that goes around the world. So you can still assess your structure, you can still think about risks around it, even though you may have a more resilient structure compared to others when you think of fire. And I also have thrown a lot of material at them. So if there are no questions, that's okay, because they may well be a bit burned out. One thing I'd like to do that I wasn't able to do in the slide is share 2 links that I'll put into the chat box as well. And this goes to the web page that NFPA has on the home ignition zone. There are 2 materials, PDFs, both in English and in Spanish, that can help educate yourself and that you can share. And then also the blog that we have called Firebreak, where we share information. If I go under everyone, this should work. And
yeah, no worries, Lucian. We will add for sure in the YouTube description.
Good.
100%.
Yeah.
So yeah.
But those are 2 that I think you can carry on from this presentation that help with the what we've talked about. And I did want to share as well on Twitter. You can find us too. The FireWise program is at FireWise. I'm on Twitter, Lucian NFPA, and then the longer web address for the blog, which is now in the chat as well, as a way to continue to read, to learn about this. And if this has become of interest, the Pau Costa Foundation is on Twitter. They have a very good feed there, and other groups too. I know FireSmart in Canada is on Twitter, and you can learn the pieces there. So, you know, continue from what you've learned today and find some sources where you may want to learn more.
Indeed, indeed, yes.
Yeah.
I reckon that is really handy and really interesting information.
Mhm.
And yes, we will add all these links that you just said to the YouTube description,
Yeah.
like that the people we can join it. So, well, thank you very much to all of you to be connected like during this 45 minutes. I hope that you learn a lot with Lucian. And yeah, so we invite you to share all this message with your family and friends through your social networks using the hashtag Repsol Volunteers by tagging @Repsol Worldwide. So saying that, thank you again, Lucian. Thank you all the Repsol organization. And to all of you, have a lovely day. Bye.
Very good. Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.